King Zorn's fist slams onto the ornate table, sending tremors through the Xindi royal palace. The news of his daughter's pregnancy by a human diplomat has just reached his pointed ears, and his reptilian features contort with unbridled rage. "Bring me Austin Russell," he roars, his voice echoing through the cavernous throne room, "and summon my advisors immediately." The Xindi Empire, known throughout the galaxy for its fierce xenophobia and unwavering belief in racial purity, now faces an unprecedented crisis. Princess Phoebe, despite her renowned ugliness by Xindi standards, carries within her womb a child that threatens to shatter millennia of carefully maintained genetic isolation. As the king's top advisors file into the room, their scaled faces etched with concern, King Zorn paces furiously. The air crackles with tension, each advisor acutely aware of the potentially catastrophic implications of this development. "Your Majesty," one advisor ventures, "we've confirmed that the human Austin Russell is indeed the father. He's currently stationed on our homeworld as a diplomat." King Zorn's eyes narrow dangerously. "Arrest him, immediately. Confine him to the palace dungeons." As royal guards rush to carry out the order, the king turns to his chief geneticist. "Explain to me how this abomination is possible." The geneticist, a wizened Xindi with pale blue scales, clears his throat nervously. "Your Majesty, it appears Princess Phoebe possesses a rare genetic trait. While it renders her less appealing to Xindi standards, it seems to make her highly attractive to humans." The room falls silent as the implications sink in. Unbeknownst to the Xindi, this trait is the result of an ancient interspecies breeding program conducted by a long-extinct alien race. Austin Russell, the unwitting human at the center of this storm, had no idea of the significance of his actions when he engaged in a secret affair with Phoebe during diplomatic negotiations. As news of the incident spreads rapidly through secure Xindi communication channels, human intelligence operatives stationed throughout the galaxy begin to intercept fragments of information. The human government, recognizing the potential for diplomatic disaster, starts formulating plans to extract Austin from Xindi custody. Meanwhile, in the depths of the palace dungeons, Austin Russell paces his cell, his mind racing. He replays every moment of his clandestine meetings with Phoebe, trying to understand how their passionate encounters could have led to this crisis. The dank walls seem to close in around him as he grapples with the weight of his actions. Above, in her opulent chambers, Princess Phoebe stands before a mirror, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Her features, grotesque by Xindi standards, belie the inner turmoil she feels. Torn between loyalty to her people and her growing feelings for Austin, she knows she must navigate the treacherous political landscape while protecting her unborn child. As tensions escalate, both species begin mobilizing their military forces. The galaxy teeters on the brink of interstellar war, all because of an unexpected pregnancy that threatens to bridge the gap between two vastly different species. King Zorn, his initial rage now simmering into cold calculation, considers his options. The potential of a hybrid heir, combining human adaptability with Xindi strength, poses a threat he cannot ignore. His reptilian eyes narrow as he contemplates drastic measures to terminate the pregnancy and eliminate Austin Russell. Little does he know that his actions in the coming days will determine not just the fate of his empire, but the future of galactic peace itself. As the stars watch in silent witness, the drama unfolds, with the unlikely union of human and Xindi at its center, poised to reshape the cosmic order forever. As the weight of the situation settled upon the royal palace, King Zorn's initial rage transformed into a cold, calculated fury. He barked orders to his guards, his voice reverberating through the ornate halls. "Seal every entrance and exit. No one leaves or enters without my express permission." The palace erupted into a flurry of activity as guards rushed to comply with the king's commands. Heavy metal gates clanged shut, and force fields hummed to life, enveloping the entire complex in an impenetrable barrier. King Zorn turned to his most trusted advisor, General Kraz, a battle-hardened Xindi with deep scars crisscrossing his scaled face. "Kraz, I want every corner of this palace scoured. Find out how that human managed to get close to Phoebe, and double the security around the princess's chambers." General Kraz bowed low, his voice a gravelly rumble. "It will be done, Your Majesty. I'll personally oversee the investigation." As Kraz departed to carry out his orders, King Zorn summoned his lead geneticist, Dr. Vex. The elderly Xindi scientist shuffled into the throne room, his pale blue scales dulled with age. "Dr. Vex, I need answers," Zorn demanded. "What can we expect from this abomination growing in my daughter's womb?" Dr. Vex's eyes gleamed with barely concealed excitement. "Your Majesty, this is an unprecedented opportunity for genetic research. With your permission, I'd like to begin a series of simulations and experiments to explore the potential outcomes of this hybrid union." King Zorn's eyes narrowed. "Do what you must, but I want daily reports. If this child poses any threat to our genetic purity, I want to know immediately." As the palace buzzed with activity, deep in the dungeons, Austin Russell paced his cell. The human diplomat's once pristine uniform was now wrinkled and stained, his face gaunt from the stress of his imprisonment. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor, growing louder as they approached. Two burly Xindi guards flanked a severe-looking official who peered at Austin through the energy barrier of his cell. "Human," the official spat, "you will submit to testing. Resist, and you will face the consequences." Austin straightened his back, meeting the official's gaze with defiance. "I have rights as a diplomatic envoy. This treatment is a violation of interstellar law." The official's mouth curled into a sneer. "Your rights mean nothing here. You've committed a crime against the very essence of Xindi society." Before Austin could protest further, the energy barrier disappeared, and the guards seized him roughly. They dragged him down a series of winding corridors to a stark, clinical room filled with unfamiliar equipment. As the guards strapped Austin to an examination table, he caught sight of a Xindi in a white lab coat preparing a series of instruments. The realization of what was about to happen sent a chill down his spine. Meanwhile, in her chambers, Princess Phoebe stood at her window, staring out at the bustling capital city beyond the palace walls. Her hand rested on her stomach, a gesture that was becoming increasingly frequent. The sound of her chamber door opening made her turn. Her personal handmaiden Lyra entered the room, her eyes darting nervously. "Your Highness," she whispered, approaching Phoebe, "I've managed to gather some information about the human." Phoebe's eyes widened. "Austin, is he all right? What have they done to him?" Lyra's voice dropped even lower. "He's being held in the palace dungeons, Your Highness. They're conducting tests on him." Phoebe's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. "We have to help him, Lyra. There must be something we can do." The handmaiden hesitated, then nodded. "I might have a way to get messages to him, Your Highness, but it would be extremely dangerous." "Do it," Phoebe said without hesitation. "Whatever the risk, we must find a way to communicate." As Lyra bowed and retreated from the room, Phoebe turned back to the window. Beyond the shimmering force field that now encased the palace, she could see the first signs of unrest in the city. Crowds were gathering in the streets, their agitated voices carried on the wind. Unbeknownst to the Xindi, high above the planet's surface, a cloaked human ship maintained a silent vigil. Inside, Commander Sarah Chen pored over holographic displays of the palace's defenses. "The force field is our biggest obstacle," she muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls. "But if we can hijack their power grid for just a few seconds—" A junior officer approached, saluting crisply. "Commander, we've received new intel. It seems the princess is sympathetic to Austin's plight. This could be the opening we need." Chen's eyes lit up with possibility. "Excellent. If we can establish contact with the princess, we might be able to coordinate our extraction from the inside." As the human rescue team refined their plans, the Xindi capital seethed with tension. In shadowy corners and dimly lit taverns, whispers of a forbidden past began to circulate. The mysterious figure known only as the Whisper had begun to sow seeds of doubt about the Xindi's true history. In one such establishment, a group of young Xindi huddled around a table, their voices low and urgent. "Have you heard?" one of them whispered. "They say there's evidence of ancient contact between our people and the humans, that we might be more connected than we've been led to believe." Another scoffed. "That's impossible. Our genetic purity is the foundation of our society." But what if it's true? A third chimed in. What if this pregnancy is awakening something long dormant in our species? As the debate raged on, none of them noticed the hooded figure slipping out of the tavern, melting into the shadows of the Xindi night. The whisper had planted the seeds of revolution, and now it was time to watch them grow. As whispers of revolution spread through the Xindi capital, a new chapter in the unfolding drama began to take shape. The cloaked human ship hovering above the planet's surface sprang into action, initiating a daring rescue operation that would push the boundaries of both technology and diplomacy. Commander Sarah Chen's fingers flew across the ship's control panel, activating a suite of advanced holographic systems. "Team, this is our moment," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Remember, we're not just rescuing Austin, we're preventing a war." The rescue team, clad in form-fitting stealth suits, shimmered and transformed before Chen's eyes. Where once stood a group of humans, now a squad of Xindi guards materialized, their holographic disguises indistinguishable from the real thing. "Holographic systems functioning at optimal levels," reported Lieutenant Ravi Patel, his human features now hidden behind a scaly Xindi visage. "We're ready to deploy, Commander." Chen nodded, her own appearance now that of a high-ranking Xindi official. "Let's move out, and remember, maintain calm silence unless absolutely necessary." The team beamed down to a secluded area just outside the palace grounds. As they approached the imposing structure, the shimmering force field that enveloped it seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Inside the palace, Dr. Vex hunched over a holographic display, his aged eyes wide with excitement. The simulations he'd been running on the genetic makeup of the human Xindi hybrid had yielded results beyond his wildest expectations. "Incredible," he muttered, scrolling through data streams. "The combination of human adaptability and Xindi strength, this child could possess abilities we've never seen before." A junior researcher entered the lab, his scales pale with anxiety. "Dr. Vex, the king demands an update on your findings immediately." Vex straightened, his mind racing. The implications of his discovery were enormous, potentially reshaping Xindi society forever. As he gathered his data crystals, he made a decision that would alter the course of history. Meanwhile, in the depths of the palace dungeons, Austin Russell fought to stay conscious. The Xindi guards had been relentless in their interrogation, employing tactics that pushed the boundaries of his endurance. "Tell us about human military capabilities," a guard snarled, leaning close to Austin's face. "How many ships? What kind of weapons?" Austin's head lolled to the side, his vision blurry. "I've told you. I'm a diplomat. I don't have access to that information." The guard's fist connected with Austin's jaw, sending a fresh wave of pain through his body. As he spat blood onto the cold floor, Austin clung to thoughts of Phoebe and their unborn child, his determination hardening like steel. Above ground, the human rescue team, led by Commander Chen, made their way through the palace corridors. Their holographic disguises held up under scrutiny, allowing them to pass by groups of agitated Xindi officials without raising suspicion. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a petite Xindi female. Chen's hand instinctively moved towards her concealed weapon, but the Xindi raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "You're the rescue team, aren't you?" she whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "I'm Lyra, Princess Phoebe's handmaiden. I can help you find Austin." Chen hesitated, assessing the risk. After a moment, she nodded. "Lead the way, but know that if this is a trap, we won't hesitate to defend ourselves." As Lyra guided them through a maze of lesser-known passages, alarms suddenly blared throughout the palace. General Kraz's voice boomed over the intercom system. "Full lockdown initiated. All personnel report to their designated security stations immediately." The rescue team exchanged worried glances. Their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. In the royal chambers, King Zorn paced furiously as he awaited Dr. Vex's arrival. The geneticist entered, clutching his data crystals like precious gems. "Your Majesty," Vex began, his voice quavering, "I have made a discovery that may change everything we thought we knew about our species and the humans." As Vex launched into his explanation, detailing the extraordinary potential of the hybrid child, King Zorn's expression shifted from anger to disbelief, and finally to a grudging fascination. Outside the palace gates, a sleek diplomatic shuttle touched down. Ambassador Elena Torres emerged, her posture radiating calm authority despite the palpable tension in the air. As she approached the palace entrance, flanked by her small team, she could feel the weight of countless Xindi eyes upon her. A nervous palace official greeted her. "Ambassador Torres, His Majesty has agreed to grant you an audience. Please follow me." As Torres was led into the heart of the Xindi stronghold, she steeled herself for what promised to be the most challenging negotiation of her career. Back in the dungeons, Commander Chen and her team, guided by Lyra, finally reached the cell block where Austin was being held. As they rounded the final corner, they found themselves face to face with a group of elite Xindi guards, their weapons raised and ready. "Halt!" the lead guard shouted. "Identify yourselves immediately!" Chen's mind raced, knowing that their next move could either save Austin or plunge the galaxy into war. The rescue team tensed, ready for action, as the standoff stretched into a tense silence. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with the next few moments promising to shape the course of galactic history. Chen's mind raced, searching for a solution that would diffuse the situation without bloodshed. In that tense moment, inspiration struck. With a subtle hand gesture, she activated the team's holographic systems. Suddenly, the corridor erupted into chaos as multiple false images of intruders materialized throughout the palace complex. The lead guard's comm unit crackled to life with frantic reports of breaches across multiple sectors. Confusion spread across his face as he barked orders to his team, dividing their forces to respond to the perceived threats. Seizing the opportunity, Chen and a small group of her team slipped past the distracted guards, making their way deeper into the dungeon level. The holographic disguises flickered momentarily as they passed through a security field, revealing their true human forms for a split second before stabilizing. As they navigated the maze-like corridors, alarms blared throughout the palace. But instead of heightening security, the alarms seemed to be causing more confusion. Guards rushed past them in all directions, shouting conflicting orders. "What's going on?" Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Chen's comm unit buzzed softly. She pressed it to her ear, listening intently before a smile spread across her face. "It seems we have an unexpected ally," she murmured. "Princess Phoebe has ordered a sudden security drill. She's creating cover for us." Meanwhile, in the royal chambers, King Zorn's meeting with Ambassador Elena Torres was interrupted by the cacophony of alarms and shouted orders echoing through the palace halls. "What is the meaning of this?" Zorn demanded, rising from his ornate chair. Torres remained seated, her posture relaxed despite the chaos. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, this is an opportune moment to discuss some sensitive information." Zorn's eyes narrowed as Torres produced a data crystal, its surface glowing with an ominous blue light. "We have evidence," Torres said, her voice calm but firm, "of your empire's attempts to reverse engineer human technology, a clear violation of our existing treaties." The color drained from Zorn's face as the implication sank in. Before he could respond, the doors burst open, and Dr. Vex rushed in, his lab coat askew and his eyes wild with excitement. "Your Majesty!" Vex exclaimed, clutching a stack of data pads. "I've made a discovery that will change everything." In the dungeons below, Austin Russell had been biding his time. The chaos erupting around him provided the perfect opportunity. As a guard passed his cell, distracted by the alarms, Austin struck. With a swift movement, he grabbed the guard's arm through the energy barrier, using the Xindi's own momentum to slam him against the cell's controls. The barrier flickered and died. Austin stumbled out, his legs weak from days of confinement. He grabbed the guard's weapon and comms unit, then set off down the corridor, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with a familiar face. "Lyra!" he gasped. The handmaiden's eyes widened in recognition. "This way," she whispered, grabbing his arm. "The rescue team is close." They hurried through the winding passages, the sounds of conflict echoing around them. Suddenly, they turned a corner and found themselves face to face with Commander Chen and her team. The reunion was brief but intense. Chen quickly filled Austin in on the extraction plan, her words clipped and efficient. But before they could move, the unmistakable sound of marching feet approached. General Kraz appeared at the head of a group of elite soldiers, their weapons trained on the humans and their Xindi allies. "Surrender now," Kraz growled, "or face the consequences of your treason." The two groups stood frozen, the air thick with tension. Just as it seemed violence was inevitable, Dr. Vex burst onto the scene, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Wait," he cried, waving a datapad frantically. "I found something. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about our species and the humans." All eyes turned to the geneticist as he launched into a breathless explanation. "There's a dormant gene sequence in our DNA. It matches a specific human genetic marker. Don't you see? This suggests an ancient biological connection between our species." The revelation sent shockwaves through both groups. Weapons lowered slightly as the implications began to sink in. In the stunned silence that followed, a new voice rang out. "And I am living proof of that connection." Princess Phoebe strode into view, her head held high despite the fear evident in her eyes. She placed a protective hand over her stomach as she addressed the assembled group. "I am carrying a child," she announced, her voice steady. "A child that is both Xindi and human, and I intend to marry its father, Austin Russell." The declaration hung in the air, a challenge to centuries of Xindi tradition and the very foundations of their society. General Kraz's face contorted with a mix of shock and outrage, while his soldiers shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to proceed. As the group stood at this crossroads of history, the mysterious figure known as the Whisper seized the moment. Across the Xindi Empire, communication channels crackled to life with an urgent broadcast. "People of Xindi," a distorted voice announced, "you have been deceived. Ancient records reveal a history of cooperation between our species and the humans. The time has come to reclaim our shared legacy and forge a new path forward." In the royal chambers, King Zorn listened to the broadcast with growing dismay. He turned to Ambassador Taurus, his expression a mix of resignation and grit. "It seems," he said slowly, "that we have much to discuss." As the implications of these revelations rippled through the palace and beyond, the rescue team, Austin, Phoebe, and their allies, found themselves at the center of a rapidly unfolding revolution. The future of both species hung in the balance, with the potential for a new era of cooperation or a descent into further conflict. General Kraz, his authority crumbling around him, raised his weapon once more. "This changes nothing," he snarled. "You are all still under arrest." But as he spoke, more Xindi guards arrived, their loyalties clearly divided. The rescue team tensed, ready for action, as the delicate situation teetered on the edge of chaos. Chaos, the standoff between General Kraz's forces and the rescue team, teetered on the brink of violence when a commanding voice cut through the tension. "Stand down, all of you!" King Zorn's authoritative tone echoed through the corridor. Flanked by a contingent of royal guards, he strode into view, his regal bearing a stark contrast to the chaotic scene before him. General Kraz hesitated, his weapon still raised. "Your Majesty, these intruders—" "I said stand down, General," Zorn repeated, his eyes narrowing. "The situation has become far more complex than a simple matter of intruders and prisoners." As weapons lowered hesitantly on both sides, King Zorn addressed the assembled group. "In light of recent revelations, I am calling an emergency session of the Xindi High Council. All parties involved will be granted temporary diplomatic status until this matter is will-powered." Ambassador Elena Torres stepped forward, her posture radiating calm authority. "A wise decision, Your Majesty. The stakes here extend far beyond a single incident." Within hours, the Grand Hall of the Xindi Palace buzzed with activity as members of the High Council filed in, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. The circular chamber, with its soaring ceilings and ancient murals depicting Xindi history, hadn't hosted a full council meeting in generations. King Zorn took his place at the head of the assembly, the weight of the moment evident in his furrowed brow. To his right sat Ambassador Torres, her presence a clear sign of the gravity of the situation. On his left, Dr. Vex fidgeted nervously, his data crystals clutched tightly in his hands. As the last council members settled into their seats, King Zorn rose to address the assembly. Esteemed members of the High Council, we face a moment unprecedented in our history. The foundations of our understanding of our place in the galaxy have been shaken. A murmur rippled through the chamber as Zorn recounted the events of the past days. The human diplomat's capture, the rescue attempt, and most critically, Dr. Vex's genetic discoveries. Dr. Vex stepped forward, his nervous energy palpable as he activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Honorable Council, what you see before you is a comparison of Xindi and human DNA sequences. This highlighted section, he pointed to a glowing strand, represents a dormant gene in our genome that bears striking similarity to an active gene in humans. The council members leaned forward, their expressions a mix of fascination and disbelief. Vex continued, his voice gaining strength as he delved into the implications of his findings. This suggests a biological connection between our species, dating back millennia. The compatibility could lead to offspring with enhanced capabilities, potentially advancing both our species in ways we've never imagined. As Vex spoke, Austin and Princess Phoebe were escorted into a secure viewing gallery overlooking the council chamber. Phoebe's hand rested protectively over her stomach, her eyes fixed on the proceedings below. Outside the palace walls, a crowd had begun to gather. Young Xindi scientists and progressives, words spreading rapidly through social media channels, assembled in a peaceful demonstration. Their chants for openness and cooperation drifted faintly into the council chamber, a constant reminder of the changing tide of public opinion. General Kraz, his face a mask of scarcely controlled fury, rose to speak. This is madness. We cannot consider altering millennia of Xindi tradition based on one questionable discovery. I propose we contain this information and eliminate the threat to our purity. His words were met with a mix of nods and frowns from the council members. Ambassador Torres seized the moment to interject. If I may, honored council, she began, her voice steady and clear. Earth is prepared to offer a joint research initiative, sharing our advanced medical technology in exchange for cooperation. This could be the beginning of a new era of mutual advancement. As debate erupted among the council members, a commotion at the chamber entrance drew all eyes. Lyra, still dressed in her handmaiden attire, strode purposefully into the room, flanked by two elderly Xindi. Your Majesty, esteemed council, she announced, her voice ringing with unexpected authority. I am Lyra, keeper of the ancient archives. These artifacts, she gestured to a hovering tray of objects following her, provide irrefutable evidence of past cooperation between Xindi and humans. King Zorn leaned forward, his eyes widening as Lyra activated a holographic display. Ancient star charts flickered to life, showing Xindi and human ships flying in formation. These records were hidden to protect our people during a time of great turmoil, Lyra explained. But now they may hold the key to our future. As the council erupted into furious debate, King Zorn called for a recess. He retreated to his private chambers, the weight of the impending decision heavy on his shoulders. The fate of the Xindi Empire, and perhaps the future of interstellar relations, hung in the balance. In the viewing gallery, Austin turned to Phoebe, his voice low. Whatever happens, we're in this together. Phoebe nodded, her eyes never leaving the council chamber below. I think it's time they heard from us directly. She placed a hand on her stomach, a look of purpose settling over her features. From all of us. As the council members began to file back into the chamber, tension thick in the air, a palace attendant approached King Zorn with a message. The king's eyebrows raised as he read it. Then he nodded slowly. The gavel struck, calling the council back to order. King Zorn stood, his voice carrying across the now silent chamber. Before we continue our deliberations, we have a unique request. Princess Phoebe wishes to address the council. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Never in Xindi history had a member of the royal family addressed the High Council directly, let alone on a matter of such gravity. As Phoebe made her way to the council floor, all eyes turned to her. She stood tall, her hand intertwined with Austin's, ready to make her case for a future that, mere days ago, would have been unthinkable. Unthinkable. As Phoebe stepped onto the council floor, a hush fell over the assembly. She squared her shoulders, her eyes meeting those of the council members with unwavering purpose. Austin stood beside her, his presence both a comfort and a statement. "Esteemed members of the High Council," Phoebe began, her voice clear and steady. "I stand before you not just as your princess, but as a harbinger of change. The child I carry within me is living proof of the connection Dr. Vex has discovered." She placed a hand on her stomach, the gesture drawing all eyes. "This child represents the future, a future where Xindi and humans stand together, not as separate species, but as partners in the great tapestry of the universe." As Phoebe spoke, she recounted her experiences with Austin, painting a vivid picture of their relationship that transcended species barriers. She described the initial fear and hesitation, the gradual understanding, and finally, the deep bond that had formed between them. "I have seen the best of humanity through Austin's eyes," she continued, her voice growing passionate. "Their curiosity, their resilience, their capacity for love. These are qualities that complement our own. Together, we can achieve greatness beyond our wildest dreams." The council chamber remained silent, many members leaning forward in their seats, captivated by Phoebe's words. Even General Kraz, his face a mask of conflicting emotions, seemed to be listening intently. As Phoebe concluded her speech, King Zorn rose from his seat. The weight of history seemed to rest on his shoulders as he surveyed the room. "My fellow Xindi," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber, "we stand at a crossroads. The path before us is uncertain, but it is also filled with potential." With a deep breath, Zorn made his declaration. "I hereby announce a temporary suspension of our isolationist policies. We will enter a period of controlled cultural and scientific exchange with the humans." A collective gasp rippled through the council. Zorn raised a hand for silence before continuing. "Furthermore, Austin Russell is to be released from custody immediately. He will be recognized as a diplomatic guest of the Xindi Empire." The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Ambassador Torres nodded approvingly, while General Kraz's face darkened with impossibly strong fury. Dr. Vex, practically vibrating with excitement, was already scribbling notes on his datapad. As the council session adjourned, the news spread like wildfire through the Xindi capital. The streets erupted in a cacophony of celebration and protest. Progressive groups gathered in public squares, waving banners promoting unity and cooperation. In other parts of the city, conservative factions marched, their chants decrying the perceived threat to Xindi purity. King Zorn, anticipating the potential for unrest, ordered the Planetary Defense Force to maintain order. Troops in gleaming armor took up positions at key points throughout the city, their presence a silent reminder of the delicate balance being struck. In a secure wing of the palace, Dr. Vex wasted no time in establishing a joint human-Xindi research team. The hastily assembled group of scientists from both species huddled around holographic displays, their excited chatter filling the air as they began to unravel the mysteries of the compatible gene sequences. General Kraz, his fists tight and barely held back frustration, found himself face to face with Commander Chen. "I hope you understand the gravity of this situation," he growled, eyeing the human officer warily. Chen met his gaze steadily. "Believe me, General, we are fully aware of the stakes. Perhaps we can channel that mutual understanding into effective security protocols." As they began to discuss the intricacies of safeguarding the human delegation and research team, a grudging respect began to form between the two military leaders. Meanwhile, Austin found himself thrust into a crash course on Xindi customs and protocol. Lyra, now his appointed cultural liaison, led him through the labyrinthine corridors of the palace, her voice a constant stream of information. "Remember, always bow to the third degree when greeting a member of the High Council," she instructed as they walked, "and never, under any circumstances, touch the sacred relics in the Hall of Ancestors." Austin nodded, his head spinning with the influx of new information. As they turned a corner, they encountered a group of Xindi nobles. The atmosphere instantly became frosty, with several of the nobles openly glaring at Austin. Lyra smoothly intervened, her voice taking on a tone of polite steel. Esteemed ones, may I present Austin Russell, honored guest of His Majesty King Zorn. The nobles offered stiff bows, their disapproval evident in their rigid postures. As they moved on, Austin let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "This isn't going to be easy, is it?" he murmured to Lyra. She offered him a sympathetic smile. "Change never is, Austin, but it is necessary." As the day progressed, Ambassador Torres unveiled her proposal for cultural exchange programs. The first initiative, a human art exhibition, was met with a mix of enthusiasm and skepticism. Nevertheless, preparations began in earnest, with a wing of the Grand Gallery being cleared to house the incoming human artworks. As night fell over the Zindi capital, the city buzzed with the energy of change. In the palace, King Zorn stood alone in his private chambers, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city below. The weight of his decisions pressed heavily upon him, but a glimmer of hope shone in his eyes. A soft chime interrupted his reverie. "Your Majesty," a voice announced through the comm system, "your special guest has arrived." Zorn took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Send them in," he commanded, turning to face the door. As it slid open, a hooded figure entered, their identity concealed in shadow. "Welcome," Zorn said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I believe you have some truth to share with me." "Whisper." The hooded figure stepped into the light, revealing a face etched with age and wisdom. King Zorn's eyes widened in recognition. "Elder Zan," he breathed, "I thought you had retired to the outer colonies." "Some matters are too important for retirement, Your Majesty," Elder Zan replied, his voice gravelly but strong. "I've come to share insights from our ancient records that may shed light on our current situation." As King Zorn and Elder Zan delved into a discussion about the long-forgotten history of human-Zindi interactions, events beyond the palace walls began to unfold at a dizzying pace. In the medical wing, Dr. Vex hunched over a holographic display, his brow furrowed in concentration. The latest scans of Princess Phoebe's pregnancy flickered before him, revealing startling data. He tapped his communicator urgently. "Your Majesty, we have a situation. The princess's pregnancy is progressing at an unprecedented rate." Within hours, the palace was abuzz with activity. King Zorn, emerging from his meeting with Elder Zan, strode purposefully into the medical wing. "Dr. Vex, report," he commanded, his voice taut with concern. Dr. Vex gestured to the holographic display. "The fetus is developing at an accelerated rate, far beyond what we've seen in either human or Zindi pregnancies. We need to intensify our monitoring and—" He hesitated, glancing at the king. "I believe we require human medical expertise." King Zorn's teeth clenched, but he nodded. "Do what you must to ensure the safety of the princess and the child." As word spread of the princess's condition, the atmosphere in the capital grew tense. Crowds gathered in the streets, their voices a mix of excitement and apprehension. News feeds buzzed with speculation about the implications of the hybrid pregnancy. In response to the escalating situation, Ambassador Torres stepped forward with a bold proposal. "Your Majesty," she addressed King Zorn in a hastily convened meeting, "Earth is prepared to send our top xenobiologist, Dr. Sarah Nakamura, along with advanced medical equipment to assist Dr. Vex." King Zorn paced the room, weighing the decision. Finally, he turned to face the ambassador. "Very well, but understand this, Ambassador Torres, the presence of human doctors in our capital will not go unnoticed. We must be prepared for the consequences." As preparations were made for the arrival of the human medical team, Austin found himself at the center of growing controversy. Whispers in the palace corridors turned to open hostility as he made his way through the grand halls. "Usurper!" a voice hissed as Austin passed a group of Zindi nobles. He quickened his pace, his heart racing. The situation came to a head in the palace gardens. Lord Vexikar, flanked by a group of conservative nobles, confronted Austin. "You dare to infiltrate our royal line?" Vexikar snarled, his face contorted with rage. "Your presence here is an abomination." Before Austin could respond, a figure stepped between them. Captain Zara, her uniform gleaming in the sunlight, faced Lord Vexikar with steely tenacity. "Stand down, my lord. This human is under the protection of the crown." Vexcar sneered but retreated, leaving Austin shaken but unharmed. Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Come, Mr. Russell. It's not safe for you to wander alone." As Zara led Austin back to his quarters, she spoke without turning. "You should be more careful. Not everyone views your presence here as beneficial." Austin nodded, studying his new bodyguard. "Thank you, Captain. I guess I underestimated the opposition." Zara's reply was curt. "Don't make that mistake again." Meanwhile, in the bustling spaceport on the outskirts of the capital, a sleek human shuttle touched down. Dr. Sarah Nakamura emerged, her team following with crates of advanced medical equipment. They were met by a contingent of Xindi security forces, led by General Kraz himself. "Welcome to Xindi Prime, Dr. Nakamura," Kraz said, his tone formal. "I trust you understand the sensitive nature of your presence here." Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the crowded spaceport where Xindi citizens craned their necks for a glimpse of the human visitors. "We're here to help, General. Nothing more, nothing less." As the human medical team was escorted to the palace, Ambassador Torres seized the moment to push forward her vision for broader cooperation. In a meeting with King Zorn and his advisors, she laid out her proposal for a joint human-Xindi space exploration mission. "An uncharted system just beyond our traditional borders," Torres explained, gesturing to a star chart. "A perfect opportunity to demonstrate the potential of our alliance." The room erupted into heated debate. Young Xindi scientists voiced their enthusiasm, while conservative council members raised objections. In the midst of the chaos, a new voice cut through the din. "I volunteer to oversee this mission." All eyes turned to the speaker, Admiral Thax, a decorated Xindi military leader known for his pragmatic approach. His offer sent shockwaves through the assembly, lending instant credibility to the proposal. As these events unfolded, Dr. Vex and Dr. Nakamura worked tirelessly in the medical wing, their focus on the rapidly developing hybrid fetus. The atmosphere was tense but cooperative as human and Xindi technologies merged in their efforts to understand this unprecedented pregnancy. Late one night, as the capital slept, an alert sounded in the lab. Dr. Vex's eyes widened as he interpreted the data streaming across his screen. "Sarah," he called urgently, "you need to see this." Dr. Nakamura hurried over, her breath catching as she saw the results. "Is that—" Dr. Vex nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "A dormant gene, and if I'm reading this correctly, it could grant telepathic abilities far beyond anything we've seen in either of our species." As the implications of this discovery began to sink in, the first rays of dawn broke over the Xindi capital. The city stirred, unaware of the groundbreaking revelation that had just occurred within the palace walls. Outside, crowds began to gather for yet another day of demonstrations, the air thick with the tension of a society on the brink of monumental change. In his private chambers, King Zorn stood at the window, watching as his empire awoke to a new day. The weight of the decisions before him pressed heavily on his shoulders. With a deep breath, he turned to his advisors. "Prepare the central plaza," he commanded. "It's time I addressed my people directly." As word of the king's impending address spread, the city crackled with anticipation. On the streets, in homes, and throughout the palace, all eyes turned toward the coming moment that would shape the future of two worlds. Species. On the streets, in homes, and throughout the palace, all eyes turned toward the coming moment that would shape the future of two great civilizations. As the day of King Zorn's grand assembly approached, the Xindi capital transformed into a powder keg of conflicting ideologies. Supporters of the Human-Xindi alliance marched through the streets, their voices raised in chants of unity and progress. Opposing them, traditionalists gathered in angry knots, their faces twisted with disdain for the changes sweeping through their society. General Kraz surveyed the scene from atop a security tower, his heart made as he watched the two factions clash at intersections throughout the city. He tapped his communicator. "Implement Curfew Protocol Delta. I want increased patrols in all major districts." As security forces moved to separate the warring crowds, the tension in the air thickened. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the streets as a group of anti-human protesters hurled stones at a building displaying Earth artwork. Inside the palace, Dr. Vex and Dr. Nakamura huddled over a holographic display, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of the princess's latest scans. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Vex muttered, his fingers tracing the outline of a strange, shimmering membrane surrounding the fetus. Dr. Nakamura nodded, her eyes wide. "It's like nothing I've ever seen in human or Xindi biology. This protective layer—" She paused, tapping a series of commands into the console. "It's accelerating the pregnancy. We need to prepare for an early delivery." As the medical team scrambled to adjust their preparations, Austin found himself facing a different kind of challenge. He stood at the entrance of a vast arena, his heart pounding as he prepared to undergo the Xindi rite of passage, known as the Trials of Ascension. Lyra approached him, her face etched with concern. "Are you certain about this, Austin? The trials are brutal, even for Xindi nobles." Austin nodded, his eyes fixed on the arena before him. "I have to do this, Lyra. For Phoebe, for our child, for the future of both our peoples." As Austin stepped into the arena, cameras whirred to life, broadcasting the event across the Xindi Empire. The first trial began, a test of physical endurance that pushed Austin to his limits. He ran, climbed, and fought his way through a series of obstacles, his muscles screaming in protest. Xindi nobles watched from the stands, their expressions ranging from skepticism to grudging respect. As Austin completed the second trial, a test of mental acuity under extreme stress, whispers of admiration began to spread through the crowd. In her office, Ambassador Torres received an urgent communication from Earth. Her face paled as she listened to the report. "Understood," she said tersely. "I'll inform King Zorn immediately." Torres strode through the palace halls, her mind racing. The news of alien fleets mobilizing against both Earth and the Xindi homeworld added a new layer of urgency to the already tense situation. As night fell over the capital, King Zorn stood in his private chambers, his eyes closed in deep thought. A soft chime announced the arrival of his guest. "Enter," he called. The hooded figure of Elder Zan glided into the room, his ancient eyes gleaming with wisdom. "You called for me, Your Majesty, or—" Zorn turned to face him. "I need your counsel, Whisper. The fate of our empire hangs in the balance." Elder Zan's voice was low and measured, as he spoke of an ancient prophecy. "It is said that a star child will come, born of two great civilizations. This child will usher in an era of harmony that will echo across the galaxies." The king's brow furrowed. "And you believe this refers to the child Princess Phoebe carries?" Before Elder Zan could respond, an alarm blared through the palace. General Kraz's voice crackled over the comm system. "Your Majesty, we have a situation. Lord Vexcar and his supporters have seized control of the communication hub." Chaos erupted as Vexcar's face appeared on screens throughout the capital. "Citizens of the Xindi Empire," he snarled, "we must reject this human infection before it destroys all we hold dear." General Kraz, working in tandem with Commander Chen and the human security team, moved swiftly to neutralize the threat. They stormed the communication hub, engaging in a brief but intense firefight with Vexacar's supporters. As the coup attempt was quelled, another development unfolded in the nearby uncharted system. Admiral Thax's voice crackled over a secure channel. "Your Majesty, we've made an extraordinary discovery, evidence of an ancient civilization with ties to both human and Xindi ancestral species." The news sent shockwaves through the palace. King Zorn, his purpose strengthened by this revelation, prepared to address his people. But fate had one more surprise in store. As the king donned his ceremonial robes, a frantic messenger burst into the room. "Your Majesty, Princess Phoebe has gone into labor." In the medical wing, Dr. Vex and Dr. Nakamura worked feverishly to prepare for the unprecedented birth. Austin, defying tradition, pushed his way into the birthing chamber. "I'm staying with her," he declared, his voice brooking no argument. As King Zorn took the stage in the central plaza, screens throughout the empire flickered to life, splitting to show both the king and the unfolding drama in the birthing chamber. The crowd watched in awe as Phoebe, with Austin by her side, brought their child into the world. The newborn's cry, a perfect blend of human and Xindi tones, echoed across the empire. In that moment, a wave of emotion swept through the assembled Xindi, their preconceptions melting away in the face of new life. King Zorn, moved by the scene before him, began to speak. His voice rang out, clear and resolute, as he declared a new era for the Zindi Empire. The isolationist policies of the past were no more. A joint human Zindi council would guide their civilizations forward, united against the threats that loomed on the horizon. As the king's words echoed across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some members of the opposing alien coalition began to waver, reconsidering their stance in light of this new unified front. In the birthing chamber, Austin cradled his child, marveling at the perfect blend of human and Zindi features. Phoebe, exhausted but radiant, squeezed his hand. "What shall we name our little star child?" she whispered. Austin opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a sudden burst of energy emanated from the newborn. The room filled with a soft, pulsing light, and for a brief moment everyone present felt a surge of connection, their minds linked in a web of shared consciousness. Dr. Vex and Dr. Nakamura exchanged startled glances. The implications of this development were staggering. As the light faded, they knew their work was just the beginning. The true nature of this extraordinary child was yet to be understood, and its impact on both human and Zindi civilizations had only just begun to unfold. Unfold. The newborn's cry echoed through the birthing chamber, a perfect blend of human and Zindi tones. Austin cradled the infant, marveling at the delicate features that bridged two worlds. Phoebe, exhausted but radiant, gazed at her family with tears in her eyes. "What shall we name our little star child?" she whispered. Before Austin could respond, a soft glow emanated from the infant. The room filled with pulsing light, and for a moment everyone present felt a surge of connection, their minds linked in a web of shared consciousness. As the light faded, Dr. Vex and Dr. Nakamura exchanged startled glances, the implications of this development dawning on them. In the days that followed, the capital buzzed with excitement. King Zorn, seizing the moment, announced the child's name, Zornath, honoring both human and Zindi traditions. Images of the infant spread across the empire and beyond, captivating the imagination of both species. Dr. Vex hunched over a holographic display, his eyes wide with amazement. "Sarah, look at this," he called to Dr. Nakamura. "Zornath's neural activity is off the charts." Dr. Nakamura hurried over, her brow furrowing as she studied the data. "This is unprecedented. The synaptic connections are forming at an exponential rate." As the first week passed, Zornath's development astonished both medical teams. The infant's vocalizations grew more complex, suggesting early language formation. By the end of the month, Zornath displayed rudimentary telepathic abilities, communicating basic emotions and needs without a sound. In the royal nursery, Austin sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a team of Zindi nursemaids. He held up a series of colorful objects, naming each one in both English and Zindi. Zornath's eyes followed each item, a soft coo escaping the infant's lips. "Remarkable," whispered one of the nursemaids. "I've never seen a child so young respond with such understanding." Austin nodded, a mix of pride and uncertainty crossing his face. "It's amazing, but also a bit overwhelming. I never expected fatherhood to be quite like this." King Zorn stood before a packed assembly hall, his voice ringing out with conviction. "Today, we take another step towards a united future. I am pleased to announce the creation of a new governmental department focused on interspecies relations, to be headed by Ambassador Torres." The crowd erupted in applause as Ambassador Torres took the stage. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored to accept this position and pledge to work tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between our peoples." As the reforms took shape, Princess Phoebe embarked on a series of public appearances with Zornath. At a park in the heart of the capital, crowds gathered, straining for a glimpse of the hybrid child. Phoebe stood at the center, Zornath cradled in her arms. A young Zindi child approached, her eyes wide with curiosity. "May I see the baby?" she asked timidly. Phoebe knelt down, allowing the girl a closer look. Zornath's eyes locked with the child's, and a moment of silent communication passed between them. The girl gasped, then broke into a wide smile. "The baby said hello to me!" she exclaimed, her excitement spreading through the crowd. Meanwhile, in the uncharted system, Admiral Thax's voice crackled over the comm system of the joint human-Xindi expedition ship. All hands, prepare for docking procedures. We're about to make history. The ancient space station loomed before them, its architecture a blend of styles that hinted at multiple species' influence. As the team boarded the station, they found themselves surrounded by artifacts and technology that predated both human and Xindi civilizations. "Look at this," called out a human scientist, pointing to a mural on the wall. The image depicted figures that resembled both ancient humans and Xindi, working together to build towering structures. Admiral Thax nodded, his expression grave. "This changes everything. It's tangible proof of our shared history." Back on the Xindi homeworld, not everyone celebrated these rapid changes. High Priest Kruvax stood before a gathering of devoted followers, his voice thundering with righteous anger. "We must not allow our pure Xindi blood to be tainted by these human interlopers," he declared. "The hybrid child is an abomination, a threat to the natural order." His words sparked murmurs of agreement, and soon isolated incidents of violence against human visitors began to occur in more conservative regions of the Empire. In response, General Kraz assembled a group of elite human and Xindi soldiers. "You are the Starbridge Guards," he announced. "Your mission is to safeguard the key locations and personnel vital to our alliance. You represent the strength of our united peoples." As these events unfolded, intelligence reports began to trickle in, hinting at renewed efforts by the opposing alien coalition to undermine the human-Xindi alliance. They sought to exploit the religious and cultural divisions within the Xindi Empire, their strategies evolving to meet the new challenges presented by recent developments. In a secure chamber deep within the palace, King Zorn convened a special council of human and Xindi experts. "We stand at a crossroads," he began, his eyes sweeping across the assembled group. "The birth of Zornath and the discoveries in the uncharted system have opened doors we never knew existed. But with these opportunities come great challenges. We must chart a course for our shared future, one that accounts for the integration of our species and the role hybrid individuals will play." As the council deliberated, diplomatic envoys from various alien civilizations began to arrive on the Xindi homeworld. Each sought an audience with King Zorn, their curiosity piqued by rumors of Zornath's extraordinary abilities. In the royal nursery, Austin and Phoebe watched as Zornath, now a month old but with the appearance and abilities of a much older child, manipulated a set of complex puzzles with ease. The infant's eyes glowed faintly, and nearby objects shifted without being touched. "What does this mean for our child's future?" Phoebe asked, her voice a mix of wonder and concern. Austin squeezed her hand, his gaze fixed on their extraordinary offspring. "I don't know," he admitted. "But whatever comes, we'll face it together, as a family and as united peoples." Outside the palace walls, the city hummed with activity, its streets filled with a mix of humans and Xindi going about their daily lives. The sight of the two species working and living side by side was becoming more common, a testament to the rapid changes sweeping through the empire. Yet beneath this veneer of harmony, currents of tension and uncertainty continued to swirl, hinting at the challenges that lay ahead for this fledgling alliance and the remarkable child at its center. As the fledgling alliance between humans and Xindi continued to evolve, so too did Zornath. The hybrid child's growth accelerated at an astonishing rate, defying all expectations. By 6 months old, Zornath possessed the appearance and cognitive abilities of a 5-year-old, a development that both amazed and concerned the scientific community. Dr. Vex pored over holographic readouts, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The neural plasticity is off the charts," he muttered, turning to Dr. Nakamura. "We're seeing synaptic connections forming at rates I never thought possible." Dr. Nakamura nodded, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across her tablet. "It's not just the brain development. Look at these metabolic readings. Zornath's entire physiology is adapting and evolving at an unprecedented pace." Their findings quickly caught the attention of researchers across the galaxy. Within weeks, a diverse team of scientists from various species arrived on the Xindi homeworld, eager to study this extraordinary child. King Zorn, recognizing the need for a controlled environment, commissioned the construction of a specialized facility within the palace grounds. The stellar nexus, as it came to be known, rose from the Earth in record time, its sleek architecture blending human and Xindi design elements. Austin stood at the entrance of the stellar nexus, Zornath's small hand clasped in his. The child's eyes, glowing with an otherworldly intelligence, took in every detail of their new home. "What do you think, little one?" Austin asked, his voice a mix of pride and uncertainty. Zornath turned, fixing Austin with a gaze that seemed far too old for such a young face. "It's fascinating, Father. I can sense the energy flowing through the building. It's alive." Princess Phoebe joined them, placing a gentle hand on Zornath's shoulder. "This is where we'll be living now. The scientists here will help us understand your gifts." As the royal family settled into their new quarters within the stellar nexus, tensions simmered throughout the empire. Conservative factions viewed the facility as a symbol of human encroachment on Xindi traditions. High Priest Kruvax seized upon this sentiment, his fiery speeches drawing larger crowds with each passing day. "Our pure Xindi heritage is being corrupted," he thundered from the steps of an ancient temple. "The royal family has abandoned our ways, sequestering themselves with human scientists and their alien technologies." The priest's words found fertile ground among those who feared change. Small protests began to spring up in conservative regions, their numbers growing steadily. In response to the mounting unrest, General Kraz expanded the role of the Starbridge Guards. These elite human and Xindi soldiers now patrolled key locations throughout the empire, their presence a visible reminder of the Alliance's strength. Captain Zara, her keen eyes scanning the crowd gathered outside the stellar nexus, spotted a suspicious figure attempting to access a maintenance panel. With a quick hand signal, she dispatched a team to intercept. The would-be saboteur, cornered and desperate, lashed out with a hidden weapon. Energy crackled through the air as Starbridge Guards closed in, their own weapons drawn. In the ensuing firefight, the intruder was subdued, but not before causing damage to the facility's outer defenses. As alarms blared throughout the stellar nexus, Austin rushed to Zornath's quarters. He found the child standing calmly in the center of the room, eyes closed in concentration. "Zornath, we need to get you to a safe location," Austin began, but stopped short as he noticed the faint glow emanating from his child's fingertips. Zornath's eyes snapped open, filled with an eerie light. "It's all right, Father. I've interfaced with the security systems. The threat has been neutralized." Austin stared in disbelief as holographic displays materialized around them, showing real-time data from throughout the facility. Zornath manipulated the information with mere gestures, coordinating security responses with an efficiency that left the child's father speechless. As the immediate crisis passed, the implications of Zornath's newly revealed abilities sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Dr. Vex and Dr. Nakamura huddled with their team, poring over data from the incident. "The ability to interface directly with our most advanced systems? It's unprecedented," Dr. Nakamura whispered, her voice a mix of awe and concern. Dr. Vex nodded gravely. "We're in uncharted territory now. The potential applications of this ability are staggering, but so are the risks." Outside the secure walls of the stellar nexus, the galaxy continued to churn with political and social upheaval. Ambassador Torres, undeterred by the growing unrest, pressed forward with her cultural exchange initiatives. In the bustling central plaza of a major Xindi city, crowds gathered for the opening of a human art exhibition. Holographic displays showcased Earth's greatest masterpieces, while live performances of human music filled the air. Ambassador Torres stood at the podium, her voice ringing out with passion. "Today, we celebrate the beauty that our cultures can create when we come together. This is the promise of our alliance, a fusion of ideas, of art, of science that will propel us all towards a brighter future." As she spoke, a commotion erupted at the edge of the crowd. Supporters of High Priest Kruvax surged forward, their faces contorted with anger. They tore through the displays, shattering holograms and overturning exhibits. Starbridge Guards moved swiftly to contain the situation, forming a protective cordon around the attendees. As the chaos subsided, Ambassador Torres surveyed the damage, her expression a mix of sadness and grit. "We will not be deterred," she declared, her voice carrying across the now silent plaza. This alliance is stronger than fear, stronger than hate. We will rebuild, and we will continue to move forward together. As news of the incident spread, King Zorn called an emergency meeting of his advisors. The time had come for bold action. With a heavy heart but a clear purpose, he made his decision. "Prepare a transmission to all corners of the galaxy," he commanded. "We will host a summit, a gathering of minds from Earth, from neutral species, from all who seek a future of cooperation rather than conflict." As the announcement went out, rippling across the stars, the future of the human-Xindi alliance hung in the balance. In the stellar nexus, Zornath watched the unfolding events with keen interest, the child's extraordinary mind already considering the possibilities that lay ahead. In the stellar nexus, Zornath watched the unfolding events with keen interest, the child's extraordinary mind already considering the possibilities that lay before them. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through the stellar nexus, causing lights to flicker and systems to falter. Zornath's eyes widened, glowing with an intense blue light as the child sensed the impending danger. "Father," Zornath called out, voice eerily calm, "we must initiate lockdown procedures immediately." Before Austin could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security feeds on nearby screens showed shadowy figures moving with inhuman speed and precision through the now vulnerable complex. "Zornath, come with me," Austin said urgently, reaching for his child's hand. But Zornath was already in motion, small fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "No time," the child replied, eyes never leaving the displays. "I've triggered the emergency protocols. You need to evacuate now." With a hiss of hydraulics, a hidden panel slid open in the wall. Zornath stepped inside, turning to fix Austin with a gaze far too old for such a young face. "I'll be safe here. Go." The panel closed, leaving Austin staring at a blank wall as chaos erupted around him. Captain Zara burst into the room, her uniform singed and a determined set to her jaw. "Your Highness, we need to move," she ordered, gripping Austin's arm. "The intruders are using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. We can barely track them." As they raced through the corridors of the stellar nexus, the sounds of battle echoed all around. Energy weapons discharged, leaving scorch marks on pristine walls. Starbridge guards engaged in close-quarters combat with nearly invisible foes. In the royal palace, Princess Phoebe paced nervously, one hand resting on her swollen belly. "Any word from Austin?" she asked Dr. Nakamura, who was monitoring an array of medical equipment. Before the doctor could answer, the floor beneath them shuddered. King Zorn burst into the room, flanked by a contingent of guards. "We're moving you to the secure bunker," he announced, his voice brooking no argument. "There's been an attack on the stellar nexus." Phoebe's face paled. "Austin? Zornath?" "We'll know more soon," King Zorn assured her, though worry lines creased his forehead. "For now, we need to ensure your safety." As they hurried through hidden passages beneath the palace, Phoebe suddenly doubled over, gasping in pain. Dr. Nakamura was at her side in an instant, medical scanner in hand. "The stress is causing complications," she reported, her tone professional but tinged with concern. "We need to stabilize her condition immediately." In the bunker's medical bay, Dr. Nakamura worked feverishly to monitor Phoebe and the unborn twins. King Zorn paced nearby, fielding urgent communications from his advisors. "Your Majesty," General Kraz's holographic form flickered to life. "The situation at the stellar nexus is contained, but we've suffered casualties. There's no sign of the intruders. It's as if they vanished into thin air." King Zorn's expression hardened. "And what of my grandson?" "Zornath is safe," the general reported. "The child initiated a complete lockdown of the facility's core. We're still working to fully restore systems." The king nodded, a mixture of relief and pride washing over him. He turned to gaze at his daughter, her face etched with pain as Dr. Nakamura tended to her. In that moment, he made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "General, prepare a broadcast to all channels, encrypted and open," he commanded. "It's time we reveal the full extent of our situation to the galaxy." As King Zorn's announcement reverberated across countless worlds, reactions varied wildly. On Earth, crowds gathered in city centers, cheering their support for the human Xindi alliance. In the more conservative regions of the Xindi Empire, protests erupted, with High Priest Kruvax's followers decrying the contamination of their bloodlines. Aboard the exploration fleet near the ancient defense system, Admiral Thax stared in awe at his sensor readings. The long-dormant technology was stirring to life, pulsing with energy that defied their most advanced scanning equipment. "Send a priority message to the homeworld," he ordered his communications officer. "Request permission to assemble a research team. We need to understand what's happening here." Back in the stellar nexus, Austin finally reunited with Xornath. The child emerged from the hidden chamber, looking tired but unharmed. "I'm sorry, Father," Xornath said softly. "I didn't mean to frighten you. It was the only way to ensure everyone's safety." Austin knelt down, pulling his child into a tight embrace. "You did well," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But next time, we face danger together, as a family." As the immediate crisis passed, the focus shifted to the upcoming Galactic Summit. The attack on the stellar nexus and the revelation of Phoebe's pregnancy had dramatically altered the political landscape. Species that had once been hesitant now clamored for a seat at the table, sensing that history was about to be made. In a secret facility on the outskirts of the Xindi capital, General Kraz stood before a group of young, eager faces, the first class of the joint Human-Xindi Military Academy. "You represent the future of our alliance," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "Together, we will forge a defense force capable of protecting both our peoples from any threat." As preparations for the summit intensified, a new arrival caught everyone off guard. Dr. Alara Vosh, her skin a shimmering blue-green and her eyes alight with curiosity, stepped off her sleek spacecraft. "I've come to study the hybrid child," she announced to the welcoming committee. "My research could provide invaluable insights into the future of your alliance." While the galaxy's attention focused on the Xindi homeworld, the coalition that had long opposed the Human-Xindi alliance fell eerily silent. Intelligence agencies worked overtime, trying to discern the meaning behind this sudden change in behavior. In the stellar nexus, now humming with restored power, Xornath sat cross-legged in the center of a room filled with holographic displays. The child's eyes darted from one screen to another, absorbing and processing information at an inhuman rate. "There's a pattern here," Xornath murmured, fingers tracing lines of data in the air. "A connection between the ancient defense system, the attack on the Nexus, and something else, something hidden." As delegations from across the galaxy began to arrive for the summit, the Xindi capital transformed into a vibrant tapestry of diverse cultures and technologies. The air buzzed with anticipation and tension, each visitor acutely aware that they were witnessing a pivotal moment in history. Amidst the flurry of activity, Captain Zara and her Starbridge guards remained vigilant, their eyes scanning for any sign of threat. The recent attack had shaken their confidence, but also strengthened their drive. As the sun set on the eve of the summit, casting long shadows across the gleaming spires of the Xindi capital, the stage was set for a gathering that would shape the future of the galaxy. The Human-Xindi alliance, the mysterious abilities of Xornath, the ancient defense system, and the looming threat of unknown enemies, all these threads were about to converge, with consequences that no one could fully predict. As the sun rose on the day of the Galactic Summit, the Xindi capital buzzed with an energy unlike anything it had ever known. Delegates from dozens of species poured into the Grand Assembly Hall, their diverse forms and vibrant attire creating a living mosaic of interstellar diversity. King Zorn stood at the entrance, his regal bearing tempered by the gravity of the moment. Beside him, Austin's hand rested protectively on Princess Phoebe's back, her pregnancy now visible beneath her flowing gown. As the last of the delegates filed in, the king nodded to his family. "It's time," he said softly. They made their way to the central podium, the assembled crowd falling silent as King Zorn raised his hands. "Esteemed delegates," his voice rang out, clear and strong. "We gather here today, not as separate species, but as fellow travelers in the vast expanse of our galaxy. The Human-Xindi alliance has shown us what is possible when we set aside our differences and work together. Now, we invite all of you to join us in shaping a future of shared progress and mutual understanding. As King Zorn continued his speech, emphasizing unity and collaboration, Austin scanned the crowd. He noted the rapt attention on the faces of some delegates, the skepticism on others. In the front row, Dr. Alara Vosh sat with barely suppressed excitement, her blue-green skin shimmering under the hall's lights. Midway through the summit, Dr. Vosh took the stage, her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. "Honored representatives," she began, activating a holographic display. "My research on the hybrid child, Zornath, has yielded extraordinary results. The blending of human and Xindi DNA has unlocked dormant genetic potential present in both species." The hall erupted in murmurs as Dr. Vosh presented her findings. Detailed genetic maps and comparative analyses flashed across the display, showing the unique configurations in Zornath's DNA. "This is not just a curiosity," Dr. Vosh continued, her voice rising with passion. "It represents a possible path of evolutionary advancement for all of us. The implications for medicine, for our understanding of genetics, for the very future of our species, are staggering." As the delegates debated the implications of this revelation, a piercing alarm cut through the air. Red warning lights flashed throughout the hall, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. Captain Zara burst into the room, her face etched with concern. "Your Majesty," she called out, "we're detecting massive energy readings from the ancient defense system. It's fully activated." Before anyone could react, a shimmering energy field engulfed the entire assembly hall. Outside, through the transparent dome of the building, they could see the field extending far into the sky, encompassing the whole planet. Panic spread through the crowd as communication devices failed, cutting them off from the outside galaxy. King Zorn tried to restore order, but the cacophony of alien languages and frightened cries drowned out his voice. Suddenly, a small figure pushed through the crowd. Zornath, now appearing as a 10-year-old despite being only a year old, strode purposefully toward the central computer terminal. "I can help," the child said, voice calm amidst the chaos. Without hesitation, Zornath placed a hand on the terminal. The child's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as an interface formed between mind and machine. Data streamed across nearby screens at an impossible rate as Zornath delved into the ancient system's programming. "It's not a weapon," Zornath announced, eyes still fixed on some unseen point. "It's a network, a galactic communication system built by... The child's voice trailed off as the assembly hall's lights flickered. When they stabilized, a group of figures stood in the center of the room, their forms shimmering with almost unchecked energy. One of the figures stepped forward, its features a blend of organic and technological components. "We are the precursors," it announced, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "We have waited millennia for this moment, for the emergence of a being capable of awakening our legacy." The assembly hall fell into stunned silence as the precursor continued. "The network you have discovered is our gift to the younger races, a means of sharing knowledge, of fostering cooperation across the vastness of space. We went into hiding, watching and waiting for a sign that the galaxy was ready for this inheritance." As the precursor spoke, Zornath worked feverishly at the terminal, interfacing with the ancient technology. Suddenly, the oppressive feeling of isolation lifted as the energy field transformed, becoming a conduit for information rather than a barrier. "The network is active," Zornath announced, turning to face the assembled delegates. "I can sense everything. Histories, technologies, scientific knowledge from across the galaxy, all flowing through the system." The implications of this revelation rippled through the assembly hall. Delegates who moments ago had been panicking now talked excitedly among themselves, already envisioning the possibilities this shared knowledge could bring to their worlds. As the summit attendees grappled with this paradigm shift, a cry of pain cut through the excitement. Princess Phoebe doubled over, clutching her swollen belly. "The babies!" she gasped. "They're coming!" Dr. Nakamura rushed to her side, medical scanner already in hand. "We need to get her to the medical bay immediately," she ordered. As Austin supported Phoebe, helping her towards the exit, Dr. Vex appeared, pushing through the crowd. "I can assist," he offered, falling into step beside them. The assembled delegates watched in awe as the human Xindi royal couple left the hall, the imminent birth of their children now inextricably linked with this moment of galactic significance. In the corridor outside, Austin looked back at the assembly hall, where Zornath stood among the precursors, the child's small form dwarfed by the ancient beings. He felt a momentary pang of worry for his firstborn, but Phoebe's grip on his hand tightened, pulling his attention back to the impending arrival of their twins. As they hurried towards the medical bay, the sound of excited voices echoed behind them. The summit, it seemed, was just the beginning. The birth of these new hybrid children, witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy, was about to become another powerful symbol in this day of unprecedented change.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.